here, welcoming you back to the Serenity Now podcast and our latest episode. My guest today is arguably the most controversial player in the game of hockey today, Mike Danton, former NHLer and ex-convict, recently trying to foray back into professional hockey, has been recently denied his visa to the UK to play overseas, and was kind enough to talk to me very openly and very candidly for a very long time. We talked about everything from his visa denial to his time in prison to his family to everything that's going on from now. So without any further ado, I give you my interview with Mike Danton. Let's get right into this.
Sure.
Obviously, with the visa not going through the second time, let's just get your thoughts. What's going through your mind with that not happening?
Oh, obviously, I was pretty bummed out about that. You know, when they denied me the first time, the reason for their denial was that, you know, the first time they denied it, the reason for their rejection was that I wasn't rehabilitated from my crime, right? So I guess they have an immigration law that states that if you've done over a certain amount, if you've done over 12 months in prison, then you're excluded from rehabilitation. And in order for you to enter the country, your sentence has to be spent or expired as for an ex-convict. And because I spent longer than 12 months in jail, I'm excluded from rehabilitation, and because of that, then my sentence is no longer it can't be spent or expired. So that's how they denied me. And so the second time we went about it, and I went and got 15 reference letters from RCMP officers, from local Halifax police officers and police detectives, and presidents of the universities that I've attended that have been born in London, England, that have double major doctorate degrees, and my parole officer even wrote a reference letter on my behalf, and she also submitted her criminal findings regarding my case. That I was in the lowest percentile to reoffend. I was in the lowest percentile to be a danger to society. And she spoke about my community involvement and how greatly I've turned my life around and this and that. And I had reference letters from assistant coaches in the NHL, and so we went about it the way that we went about it was to say, okay, if they've rejected you because you're rehabilitated, then let's try to illustrate to them that you are rehabilitated from your crimes and that you're not just coming over here to play hockey. We didn't think that there was a lot of plans in order for when I was going to come over to Coventry, a lot more than hockey. I was there to, they as you well know, Coventry is renowned for their community-based programs and that, and I was going to be a big part of that. And, I work closely with Joe Drexler of Be the Game and, all his Ignite Change and all that. And I was gonna be the ambassador in the UK for his brand, and that was a huge thing that we had worked out too. And so we kind of, in the second application, we brought to the head all of these reference letters and the plans that were other than hockey. Sure, I'm going there to play hockey. I'm going to make a living for my family, but I'm also going to spread my knowledge, the word that I have. About the mistakes that I've made and what it takes to, get past those mistakes and be productive in life, and, just making the best of second chances. And we put all that to paper, and, the lawyers from the team, all the members from the team, they looked at the package. I even had some people look at it over here on this side of the ocean, and, they said, Mike, like, if you get denied, like, it's just a disgrace, because there's no way that somebody can look at this package and say, this person is not rehabilitated, and, I put together a 3-page letter myself and just detailed every little aspect of my life. And, I admitted to my crimes. I accepted responsibility. And I said, but, this was 9 years ago. I was 23 years old at the time, went behind the ears in life and everything. And, I've got a family of my own now. I'm working towards a double major degree, that I'm an honors student, or that I'm an A-class student. I'm at the top of the grade in all my classes. And, this is someone that's changed their life around and missed 6 years of hockey, and he's still trying to play professional hockey. And, got my denial last week, and 2 weeks ago, and I just got the reason for the denial again this week, and it was the same thing. They said, you know what, we've looked over all your information, we've looked over, your reference letters, and, we've noted that you have a family of your own right now. However, you did spend more than 12 months in jail, and we don't think that you're rehabilitated from your crime. So, to read something like that, not only is it not only is it kind of, heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, but at the same time, basically what they're saying is that not only am I excluded from rehabilitation, but all these RCMP officers, all these Halifax local police and detectives, my parole officer, the National Parole Board of Canada, my school president, the assistant coach in the NHL, everybody that wrote reference letters for me, they have no idea what they're talking about. So they basically said, the National Parole Board let you out, and they agreed that you were in the lowest percentile to reoffend and the lowest percentile to be a menace to society, but they have no idea what they're talking about, and we think we know better because we've looked at your file, and we've looked at some writing on the wall, and we're not going to let you in because you're not rehabilitated, and it's really tough to swallow,
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I've talked a lot about this, in the last few minutes, but it's just, this is a team that, Tomo and I have been talking about, for the last 4 months, pretty much, and he's been updating me about everything with the team. He's been updating me everything in the summer, the signings, with the practices while I was over here. He's been including me in on all the team emails. And it's been gut wrenching. I've been talking to guys on the team. I've been talking to guys on the team, since the beginning of the season. Just about how practice is going, and they've been, when they've gone out, they've been, texting me, and we've been conversing back and forth about, you should have seen the game, and it got a really good feeling about how close knit the team was, and it was just gut-wrenching when I told the guys, they're like, Dan, it's like, I'm still talking to Russell Cowley, every couple of days, like, Dan, is there anything we can do? Like, what can I do? And, right now, I just think Tomo and Andy are trying to look at what we can do legally, and then see if we can appeal the decision. And, if we can, then I'll be there. But if we can't, then, I got to figure out something else to do.
You played before. I mean, you played obviously in Sweden and Austria there, but why keep bothering here? Why not just sign somewhere where it's just pretty easy to get in?
Well, I tell you what, with not only was I in Sweden and Austria, I was in 9 countries last year. Slovenia, Norway, Switzerland, Hungary, Croatia, Austria, Czech. I was in 9 different countries in Europe last year. The reason why I chose the UK, and I chose Coventry, to be honest with you. It wasn't particularly the UK. We just, when the baby came into our lives, a lot of things changed. We really liked Sweden when we were over there last year, and when we went to the Czech, it was kind of difficult because, in Sweden, so many people spoke English. In Czech, it was the complete opposite. You go grocery shopping, it took 2-3 hours to go grocery shopping, and we'd have to Google Translate everything, and it was just really difficult to get a normal life going over in the Czech Republic. The fans were great, the organization was great. It was just difficult for us to live there, and having a newborn, going to a country like that where if something happens with the baby, you got to go to a doctor and just hope they speak English, and it's just so we made a decision this summer that wherever we end up going, we'd like it to be an English-speaking country that has similar customs and culture and food that we're used to over here. Just because it's the first year that either of us have had a kid, so we just kind of wanted to let it go as smoothly as possible, and so. I started talking to some teams in the UK, and why it was Coventry was simply because just the relationship and the rapport that I built with Tomo, and he sold me on what he wanted with his team, and I'm sure you can tell by the way they play. I think they're in second place right now, 1 point behind Sheffield, and they play a hard-nosed style. They don't give up. They work hard, and that's me written all over it. He told me his dance. You're the exact type of player that I want on this team. And I said, okay. Let's see what we can do. And I gave up on a lot of opportunities that I could have made, significantly significantly more money than in the UK. You know, the UK really isn't known for paying outrageous salaries, but their draws, their enticement is, the university packages that go on there, as well as the customs and the culture. You have a lot of North American guys that head over there because the familiarity of North American customs and food and culture. So and it's from what I understand this year, it's a great brand of hockey this year. So. Yeah, so basically what drew me to Coventry was, the talks that I had with Tomo over the 2 or 3 days, and, he sold me on it. And, the other factor involved was, I think I already went into it with you, was the programs in the community that I'd be able to be a part of and help out the youth and help out the minor hockey and that kind of stuff. And that's something that I was really heavily into in Sweden, So that's always been a big part of my career after I came out of prison and wanted to play pro hockey again.
So what do you do now? I mean, is there time to try to get into another country, or are you going to stay home and play university hockey again, or what's the next step here?
Well, first of all, I'm not eligible for university hockey. Every year pro you play, you lose a year of eligibility in university. And you only have 5 years university. So by me playing pro last year, I lost my last year of university eligibility.
Oh,
so that's announced. I could play in a senior league in Canada, in either Newfoundland or Quebec. That was an option. Over the last couple days, with this knowledge getting out here, my agent and I have been contacted by some countries that they're willing to bring me in there to play. So I've been in talks with teams in 3 different countries, and I spoke to Tomo today about it, and I said I know Tomo, they Coventry had to sign another guy to with the fact that I got denied, and I told Tomo today that that I've been talking to some teams, and he's, said, Danton, you got to do what you got to do. You got to take care of your family, and we're going to do everything on this side. So, basically, I'm going to be playing somewhere. It's just where is the question, and I hope to figure that out in the next either tonight or tomorrow.
Is there a handful of teams? Anyone you can tell me? Any countries or teams, or any you can give me hints on?
The teams, no. Countries I'm considering are Sweden, Germany, and Poland right now. Those are the top 3 teams right there that I've been in talks with over the last few days. So,
who are you working with as an agent now?
My agent right now is Mike Bernier. He used to be part of the hockey group, and now he's kind of branched off onto his own.
Is he getting stuff done for you?
He's a hard worker. He's never lied to me. He's always been straight up and honest with me. And he told me last year that he says, if you come with me, he goes, I'll find you a team. He goes, I'll find you somewhere to play, and I promise you that. And he did. And he, what I was looking for, obviously I hadn't played pro in a while, so it was kind of difficult, but to get what I want. But statistically, I played really well last year, and same thing this year. He told me, he said, hey, after this Coventry thing happened, he's like, well, it's kind of late. The leagues have started, teams have started. He goes, I can try my best, and he's come up with a handful of teams that are still looking for players like me, and the paychecks don't seem that bad either. So
with Coventry, I mean, they named you assistant captain without you even being there. And I mean, obviously with your NHL background, and you're an OHL champion, CS champion, you got a lot of billing, a really high billing. Do you, and I read an interesting thing with you. You were saying about your first practice with St. Mary's and how you were falling over the place and guys were chirping you and stuff. But I mean, with that background, do you, like, on yourself, have this kind of pressure to perform? And I assume the teams are expecting this, this elite player in the game. Like, when you come to these teams, do you have? Is the pressure, I mean, beyond living up to, or is it something you thrive on, or how do you handle that sort of stuff?
I've been asked that question a lot. How I'll answer the question is that, and I'm going to try and answer it as humbly as possible. I believe me, I'm the furthest thing from being cocky whatsoever. Actually, I need a boost of confidence every once in a while. But I think players like me are extremely hard to come by. And obviously, I'm not the most skilled player in the world. That, in junior hockey, I was somebody that got, mid 80s to mid to late 80 points and over 200 penalty minutes, and playoffs, I, led the playoffs in scoring, but I still had over 100 penalty minutes, so I was when I was talking with Tomo, I was one of those guys that, that he illustrated that, you bring everything to the table. And, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to come down on a 2-on-1 or a 1-on-1, toe drag, flip it through somebody's stick, then skates, and then roof it top shelf. But I'm going to find a way to get around that guy and put the puck in the net. I may have to, flick it up in the air, run the goalie through the net, but the goal's going to count regardless, And when it comes to leadership, leadership...
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. If you find a way to make the goal count while you run the goalie, that's amazing.
I'll tell you, it's happened before where the puck's gone in and the goalie gets run and counts. I get a penalty, and coaches always say to me, he goes, Dan, just put the puck in your fucking teeth and just run through the net. You'll find a way to score, and that's just the way that I've always been. I think one of the things that Tomo really picked up on was that, I have an extremely large amount of heart and determination, and, do I agree with what, Danny Heatley and Michael Vick did? No, but you have to look what they did after that, for the facts that those types of players come back and get back into professional hockey again, it says something about their character, and for somebody like me who missed 6 years of hockey and still could manage to come out and, win a national championship in university and be an integral part of that team and then play professional hockey, a year later, that's something that, you got to be proud of and you got to look up to, So I think the fact that, I'm 31, turning 32 this year, with a lot of inexperienced local guys in England and with regards to professional sports, as well as, you have the Benny Olsons and the Judases and the Lee brothers, the Dusty Camerons, and, oh God, who am I missing here? The Shea Guthrie's, guys like that who have played professional hockey at some level, but they haven't had the NHL experience that I had, and, granted, mine was a cup of tea, or maybe 2 cups of tea, but at the same time, I think Tomo took everything into consideration and said, this is the type of guy that all the guys in the team are going to look up to, and, it doesn't take, you talk to guys that I've played with in the past, and I'm not afraid to break sticks in the room and call guys out and tell them, hey, you know what, you're fucking shit, get your head out of your ass, and, you need guys like that on the team, and those are the types of guys that the players look up to and say, hey, you know what, this guy can lead our team, so.
That's a great story. Shout out to Brad Lieb right now and the betonhockey.com team. When you get this denial that says you can't play, obviously, based on that very objective reason that this is our law and this is why you can't, it's like you said, everything considered, it still doesn't matter. And I mean, the basis of us even talking on Twitter was, that I was having this conversation. I was just interested to know his thoughts, and he was really kind of saying you shouldn't be able to have a chance at doing anything. And you obviously stepped in and made your point clear. But is it? And I see you on Twitter, you're active, always talking to people, and people are chirping you all the time. I mean, other hockey players are there, and I mean, I just wonder at some point, is it exhausting for you? I mean, people who have this major prejudice as you, just basically thinking you're a criminal. I mean, let's be honest, they hear the name Mike Danton, and they don't hear anything you've told me. They don't hear about anything else anyone knows or anything you're doing in the community or whatever it is. They just see you as a criminal, which, I mean, like you said, even 9 years ago, whatever it was. Does it, are you going to do this forever? Do you keep having these Twitter conversations? Do you keep talking to people, or at some point do you be like, you know what, I can't do this, or how do you handle that, and how do you keep going, and why do you bother?
It's humorous. It's entertaining to me. Some people go to hockey games to get entertainment. I go onto Twitter and I read the stuff that these people say, and it's ignorance. I just sit there and I laugh, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy, and what I do is, I'll retweet something that's pretty funny, and I'll be like, okay, but, you get into the stuff when they're like, oh, yeah, go suck a dick, you went to prison, go do this and bend over for your whatever, stuff like that. I block those people, that's the difference between humor and, disgustedness. I don't need my kid to be reading that thing in a few years, it's just people that are like that, they should just, they're useless, they're scum, But you look at all the negative comments on Twitter, and 95% of them are from people in Cardiff. You got to ask yourself, why are Cardiff people continuously chirping? They're our biggest rival, and
okay.
If I signed with Cardiff, 95% of the chirpers would probably be from Coventry. You know what I mean? So you get the odd person, even in Coventry, there's probably the odd person that's against me playing there, and that's fine. That's their opinion. But I think you nailed the nail right on the head. Is that hit the nail right on the head. There we go. Is that they don't know the situation. It's just like my first day at university. I'd have people triple looking me, forget double looking, triple looking at me, and going like, oh, that's the guy that tried to kill somebody. And 3 weeks later, they're the same person that's sitting with me in the library, sharing laughs and pulling pranks. And, oh, man, you're great. I thought you were going to be this big, mean monster guy. People have no idea what I'm like. They look at my mugshot where it looks like I got a big chew in the side of my mouth, and they see the word murderer, and they say, oh, you know what, this guy can't come in, and he's a criminal, he's this and that. Well, you know what, if that's your opinion, and you're, free to voice your opinion. I really don't care, but, me 9 years ago, that's the difference, is that 9 years ago, I would have had to listen to all these chirps and tweets, and, I would have wanted to punch them all in the face and cause problems and, just be completely irrational and immature about the situation. And now I laugh at it, and, I'll usually when someone says something, I'll just get in there and I'll chirp them back about their grammar and say, well, if you're going to do this, at least spell it properly. At least make it seem like it's proper pronunciation. But yeah, all in all, it's just fun, and I use it sometimes too. And like with Didio Medi, or however you say his name, going back and forth with him, and it's entertaining, to have a guy that thinks he gets under my skin by chirping me about prison. Oh, I've heard that for 10 years now. You know what I mean? So there's not one prison joke out there that I haven't heard. And it's pretty funny. The easiest way to shut him up is just talk about the NHL. And you can't say nothing. You can't talk about it. You've never done that. I have. Shut up. And so the other joke I have with him is that we played this. He's played 5 or 6 more EIHL games than I, and we've got the same amount of goals. So he can't really.
I read that, yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't. I'm not gonna waste my time talking to a guy like that I have absolutely no respect for, simply because the way that he conducts himself on Twitter, and you don't go back and forth at fans and tell them that they're fat and they're ugly. These are the people that pay your salary. You have to have some respect for the game, and he has absolutely no respect for the game, and that's why he's hated. He's not hated because he gets in Twitter wars and he celebrates after he gets the shit beat out of him and stuff like that. He's hated because he has no respect for people in the game of hockey. So I'm sure if he figured out life a little bit better, if he had respect for the game and understood his role a little more, he'd probably be a lot better player and a lot better person. But that's why he never played in the NHL, most likely.
I think that is the ultimate thing. I mean, you played in the greatest league of hockey in the world. I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't chirp you based on that. I mean, I don't have any grounds. I don't see why anyone thinks they do, but that's ridiculous. But
it's funny though. It is entertaining. I'll give you that. Like Twitter, like I came out of jail, and when I went to jail, there was no Facebook. I came out, there was this Facebook and Twitter, and we might have had MySpace before I went to jail, but I was never like a social media person. And when I got to university, I was there for a couple months, and I finally opened this Facebook account, and everyone's like, "You got to get it. We got to be friends." It was like the cool thing to do, right? Well, now I never do the Facebook thing. I find Twitter so entertaining. It is so funny. I love just going on my page and just watching everything that people say to me. I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's a good one, And like, I don't know what else I can say. It's just entertaining. But
what's available to you in prison? I hope you don't mind me asking about that. But I mean, I saw that you were playing ball hockey and stuff. But I mean, can you tweet and get on computers in prison? Or is that not allowed?
No, you can't. You know, there's child molesters and sex criminals in there, and they don't want them getting on the internet and, you know, getting their jollies off by looking at pictures of kids and stuff like that, right? So there's no internet stuff. Like, I think actually in the federal system and in the U.S. now, from what I understand, is that you can now email people, but the emails are monitored, and that's the only thing you can do. Like, you have like an email account through the Bureau of Prisons, and it costs money to send emails back and forth, something like that. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, in the States we had access, you know, to TVs, cable TVs, movies, stuff like that, but nothing that was R-rated. There was nothing, no nudity, not stuff like that would get our adrenaline up, I guess you could say. And you know, they're trying to maintain you know, proper protocol for fights and that in prison. But you know, in Canada it was a little bit more lax. We could have like video game systems in there. We could play PlayStation and stuff like that. So, but just nothing that was accessed through online, you know. So it was a little more lax. But I was in a camp in Canada. I was, you know, only a few weeks from getting pushed out the door there in Canada. But in the States, it was a lot worse in Canada.
And you were, if I read the right report, you were studying towards your degree while you were in prison. Is that right?
Yeah, I first started taking courses while I was in jail. It was kind of difficult. I only got through 2 courses because they move you around so often. It's kind of tough to get stuff to follow you, and, you know, they really screw with your mail and stuff like that in jail. So I managed only to get 2 courses done, but they have transferred over to my university degree. Now,
are you still working on that? Have you finished it, or are you going to finish it, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, no, last year I still took a full course load online. This year I'm still taking a full course load. So at the end of this year I should only have maybe 4 or 5 more courses left. So I should be done. If I went really hard, I could get done by the end of the summer. But this summer coming up, but I'm not going to do that. It'll probably be the following year. And
you're going to finish with, is it criminology, or are you going to be a lawyer, or what are you going to do?
It's a double major in psychology and criminology. What am I going to be? I don't know. I'd like to play hockey as long as I can. I like the psychology and criminology aspect. You know, I do really well in school, so the only reason I added criminology in there is psychology was coming to me fairly easy. I just wanted a bit of a challenge, so I added another major in there, and I've been working towards it ever since. So I don't know. I've been thinking about being like a university professor. I like the social aspect. I like teaching people, you know, something around sports psychology, something like that maybe.
Now here's, I hope this question makes sense. I thought a little bit about it, but you and I are about the same age. I'm 30 and you're 32, like you said, or 31, 32. When you look at, and I want to, this is your perception, when you look at Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson went to jail in 1992, which in 1995, and he got out and then resumed his career and went on its way, and it seemed, you know, he raped a girl, let's be honest, and, you know, people kind of forgot about that, and he kind of went and became Mike Tyson, kind of the caricature of himself. When you look at him, and this is before you went to jail, obviously, and then you look at a guy like Mike Vick, or even, you know, you mentioned Danny Heatley. Mike Vick went to jail for a pretty heinous thing. I mean, you know, for a couple of years, and this was after you had been released, or I think right at the end. When you look at 2 guys before and after yourself, what did you think of Mike Tyson as a criminal going back into the world and working? What was your perception of him? And we were both pretty young at the time. But then after, when you go through that experience yourself, and you look at a guy trying to get back, and Michael Vick he's like broke. I think he declared bankruptcy. Do you have a level of empathy, or what do you think of people who have gone through the same situation and are just trying to get back into sports and resume their athletic careers? What is your take on that?
You're crossing out my morals here. You're mixing my morals in with sports and my full of my heartstrings. I don't know. I think because of my personal experiences and my personal life, my childhood, I have a very big problem with people that commit crimes against, you know, sexual crimes against children and, you know, sexual crimes against women. It's really hard for me to look past and say that they deserve a second chance. However, you know, I because of my situation, you have to say that, I'm a believer in second chances, But I think the way that Tyson handled his situation illustrated that he wasn't capable of being rehabilitated. The guy is, I don't know him personally, but just the role that he portrays and the way that he handles himself, is a characterization of a nut job. He didn't seem like he had a lot of remorse, even when he stated that he had remorse and he was sorry. You could just read the bullshit all over his face. With regards to Michael Vick, to what degree his involvement was in the dogfighting ring is, I don't think anybody will ever know for sure. But still he was involved, and he went to jail. One crime's a little bit different than the other. I'm sure I'll have PETA call me after this, but at the same time, I have nothing but respect for how Vic has handled himself. He's come out, he's accepted responsibility. He's, I think pretty sure he even did stuff with PETA and, volunteered, did some things. I can't remember exactly, but he did some type of charity work or donations with animals or something. He's tried to right his wrongs. The way that he's conducted himself. I follow him on Twitter. If you follow his tweets, he's no Jose Canseco on Twitter, let's say. Everything's about, his religion, his family, and his sport that he loves, and he's very respectful about it. I think that's somebody that has made a wrong decision in his life and has turned it around for the better. And, he's prospering. He's playing the game that he loves. He's making a boatload of money. And, I have no problems with that. It's the problem that I have, though, that's very difficult is that he has been able to continue the game that he loves at its highest level, and I haven't been. I can't go to Asia. I can't go to the UK. I can't go to the States. I can't even go and watch my favorite baseball team play in the World Series last year because I committed a crime 9 years ago. If my son goes in a hockey tournament in 7 years to Detroit, I can't go there and watch him because I made a mistake, 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. At that time, it'll be 14, 15 years ago. This is something that, and don't get me wrong, I broke the law. What I did was illegal. However, I paid my dues. My dues have been paid. I've been punished. I lost a lot of money. I lost the opportunity to make a lot of money. I lost 6 years of my life from family, friends, a lot of things that I enjoyed on a daily basis, and those are things that I'm never going to be able to get back. I think my punishment is enough. I'm not going around, to bars and getting in fights. I'm not going around putting bounties on people's heads. I'm not going around getting drunk and raping girls and selling drugs and doing drugs. I've gone to university. I'm working towards a double major degree. I'm trying to play professional hockey, but I'm getting stopped at certain junctions. I've started a family of my own. What I say is, where's my break? You know what I mean? Vic got a break. Tyson got a break. Healy got a break. Where's my break? That I'm still allowed to play hockey. Oh yeah, it's in Sweden 3rd division. It's in an elite league in Austria. So it's not the American League. It's not the NHL. I'm gonna have to make a decision here in a couple of years whether or not I want my son growing up in Europe following me around. If I don't, I'm gonna have to quit hockey and do something else. I don't want to quit hockey. I got lots of time left. I got lots of hockey left. So I guess the way to answer your question is, I got a lot of respect for those guys that have made mistakes in their life and came back, like Vic. I'm not so respectful of the Tyson situation simply because of the way he handled himself. But I just wish that, if people can look past Mike Tyson and his issues, how can you not look past mine? Legitimately, I didn't kill anybody. If it would have been carried out, yes, I understand the ramifications. However, that's a hypothetical situation. You can't imprison somebody or punish someone for hypothetical situations that didn't happen. Vic did what he did. Tyson did what he did. Heatley did what he did. I did what I did. I didn't kill anybody, and I didn't rape anybody. So I'm going on and on and on, but I'm sure you can catch my point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was going to ask you about, you mentioned your family a couple of times, and it's tough to find any info on them, but you have a son, I gather. How old is your son?
Yes.
How old is your son, and what's he?
He's 6 weeks.
Oh, wow, he's brand new, 6 weeks old, wow.
Yeah, he's newborn.
And,
yeah, my family's kept private for a reason. I've had some issues in my past with my own family that I like to keep my personal life somewhat personal, just so certain information doesn't get out. But yeah, he's newborn. He's 6 weeks.
Okay.
I don't want to call hockey quits, but to answer your question, what types of things could come out? I'd like to coach. Coaching has crossed my mind. Like I said, becoming a university professor. That's something that could transition out of my career. There's a lot to do. It's funny because you see a lot of athletes that go to university and they end up teaching English, or they end up becoming physical education teachers, something like that. And I think a lot of athletes are very vocal. They're very social. They're used to being in the spotlight. They're used to being around 20, 30 guys every day that chirp each other and get along and have this frat relationship. And I think that's, if you teach, you teach youngsters, you teach teenagers, you teach university kids. That's that element of social activity that can remain with you throughout all those years of sports. Varsity, amateur, professional, whatever it be. So that's something that I'm pretty sure I'm going to go down that road in the future. So
the last thing I want to ask you is just with your whole situation, it was so hard to find like exact information about what your conviction and everything else, and I was just curious as to because you were on parole, you were let out, and now that was in 2009 or in 2012. Are you still on parole, or are you like out and is that done? Or I couldn't figure out where you were with that.
I was arrested on April 16th, 2004. I was released from prison in Canada on September 28th, 2009. So I spent 65 months in prison. Mm-hmm. 22 of those months were in solitary confinement. I received my full parole from the National Parole Board of Canada September 11th, 2009. So I received my parole on the 11th. They took a couple weeks until they finally released me from prison. They released me on the 28th of September 2009. And then I was on parole until, I think it was January 21st, 2011. So I was on parole for a little more than a year where, I had to abstain from alcohol, drugs, I had to do urine tests, and so I don't do drugs anyways, but those are the stipulations. I couldn't do drugs, couldn't drink alcohol. I had to do, random urine tests. We won the national championship in St. Mary's, and all the boys were drinking champagne out of the cup, and the boys threw me sparkling water, and I had to drink that, because I just wasn't allowed to. That was kind of a bummer, but yeah, I wasn't allowed to travel anywhere without a travel permit. If I wanted to go to my girlfriend's cottage for the weekend, I'd have to have, a representative from the Canadian Parole Board go visit the cottage, check it out, interview her parents. I'd have to be supervised and everything. I had to go through a lot of hoops. But January 21st, 2011 came along. I was no longer on parole. I've been a free man ever since. I have nobody to report to. It's just like before I went to prison. I'm absolutely not on parole one bit.
So there's no terms. You were just a free man walking around, and you were just like everybody else. Then there's no you. Yep. Now I don't want to push any buttons here at all, but I mean with the terms before, you weren't supposed to contact your dad and David Frost, this other guy, and there's this one thing in 2007 with the credit card thing and the gas thing. Do you have any contact with these guys now that you're beyond parole, or have you just closed those doors, or
legally I can't even talk about that just because of things that are still out there. I can't talk about that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But they will be addressed in the future for sure.
Okay. Well, Mike, this has been awesome. I just want to thank you for talking to me. The things you've said, and I mean, like I said, this whole thing started with a guy having a very ignorant take on you, and I was just curious, and I'm so thankful that you interjected in that, and you were able to talk to me about this for so long there. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I want to wish you best of luck in wherever you end up. First of all, I hope as a guy myself, I used to play and I can't play anymore, and that always kills me. So if you still have the opportunity to play, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you play as long as you possibly can.
I will, for sure.
But beyond that, I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, you've changed my opinion for sure, and I mean, that enables me to tell other people about what you've told me, and I really hope that you keep fighting the good fight, I guess, if you want to call it that. I mean, I hope you change a lot of other people's minds, because I think you've got a very great story to tell. So
I appreciate that, Dave. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I know a lot of people have different opinions on Mike Danton, what he's done, and what kind of guy he is now, but getting to talk to them one-on-one like that really it changed a lot of things for me and my opinion on him, so I hope it opened your ears and your mind a little bit to him as well. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk to you again. See you next time.